Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're tackling a topic you guys specifically requested: the relationship between taking risks and happiness.
Oh, this is a good one.
It is. You mentioned a decision coming up that involves you maybe stepping outside your comfort zone a bit.
Stepping outside the comfort zone. I like that.
So, we're going to dig into this podcast episode called How Taking Risks Impacts Our Happiness and hopefully get some clarity along the way.
Yeah, it's funny. We always think of risk as like this big extreme thing, like quitting your job out of the blue.
Right, like I'm out of here.
Exactly. Like super dramatic. But it's really about way more than just those massive life moments.
Right, it's not always about, like jumping out of a plane, although
That does sound kind of fun, though.
it does. But let's get serious for a second.
Yeah.
Where do we even start to define taking risks?
Yeah.
Because this source makes it clear it's not just these huge gestures.
Yeah, for sure. It's more about kind of pushing your boundaries, being okay with a little uncertainty.
Uncertainty, yeah. It's like a spectrum,
Yeah.
On one side, you've got like trying a new dish at your favorite restaurant.
Oh, I love doing that.
Or finally signing up for that pottery class you've been thinking about forever.
Yeah.
Those are smaller risks, baby steps into the unknown.
I like that, baby steps.
But then you have things like, I don't know, switching careers or moving to a whole new city. Those are the biggies, the ones that really shake things up.
Those are life changers for sure.
Yeah. But I think the main takeaway here is that any step outside that comfy little comfort zone of yours, no matter how big or small, well, that's a risk.
And what I find fascinating is this source really highlights how taking risks, even the tiny ones, can make you happier.
It's true.
But I'm always curious about the why. Like, what's the science behind that?
Yeah.
Help me understand the connection between risk-taking and happiness.
Okay, well, think about it this way. Challenges help you grow, right?
Absolutely.
When we take risks, we kind of have to learn new stuff, navigate new situations, and because of that, our confidence grows.
Oh, that makes sense. It's like that feeling you get when you finally nail a really hard recipe you've been working on, or you finish that DIY project that's been sitting around forever.
Oh, or when you finally learn to parallel park. It took me so long, but when I finally got it, I was like, yes.
Right, that I did it feeling.
Yeah,
That's pure happiness fuel right there.
totally. And this source also mentions how trying new things can fight off boredom, which we all know is a huge happiness killer.
Oh, for sure. Boredom is the worst. But, our brains crave novelty. Like, think about how excited you get when you travel to a new place
Oh, yeah.
or try a new activity.
It's so true. I feel that.
That's dopamine, your brain's reward system kicking into gear. It's not just about the thrill. It's about keeping things fresh and exciting. And that alone can totally change how you feel.
I get that. For me, I try a new workout class or explore a different part of town.
Yeah.
It always shakes things up.
It's so good for you.
It is. But let's be real, taking risks doesn't always mean things go perfectly. Sometimes things don't work out the way you hoped.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where resilience comes in.
Right, because taking a risk means accepting that sometimes it might not work out.
This source really nailed it. Even if a risk doesn't give you the exact results you wanted, the process is still valuable.
Yeah.
You learn to adapt, figure out how to deal with setbacks, and, you come out stronger on the other side.
It's like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly. Being able to handle uncertainty, to bounce back from, well, anything that's huge for your well-being, it's like building a mental muscle.
I love that analogy. And, thinking about the decision you mentioned earlier, what if instead of just focusing on the end goal, you focused on what you learn along the way?
Oh, that's a great point.
No matter what the outcome, think about the skills you'll gain, the resilience you'll build.
Yeah, reframe it.
Exactly. And the source pointed out another benefit of risk-taking that I hadn't really thought of: its effect on relationships.
It's interesting, though.
It is. It's not the first thing that comes to mind, but it totally makes sense. I mean, it's like that saying, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor.
That's so true. It's all about going through things together, sharing vulnerability. Imagine traveling with your friends, starting a business with a partner, or even just tackling a tough escape room together. Those risks you share, the obstacles you overcome as a team, they build memories and strengthen your bond in a way nothing else can.
Okay, that makes total sense. Those bonds you forge by going through something together, that's powerful stuff.
Definitely.
But I want to dive a little deeper into the science here. The source mentioned studies in positive psychology. What have they discovered about risk-taking and its link to happiness?
The research is pretty cool. They've actually found a clear connection between stepping outside your comfort zone and feeling more accomplished and satisfied with life.
Wow, that's really interesting.
And you know what else? Risk takers are more likely to experience something called flow.
Okay, flow. Now you have to explain that one because I'm super curious.
All right, so picture this. You're totally absorbed in what you're doing, so much so that you lose track of time. It's challenging, you're engaged, but not overwhelmed.
Ooh, I like that.
You're in the zone, you know?
Yeah.
That's flow. And guess what? This often happens when we push ourselves just a bit past our comfort zones. Think of an athlete in the zone during a competition, or a musician totally lost in their music. It's pure joy and engagement, and taking risks can help you get there more often.
That's pretty amazing. So taking risks can lead to personal growth, new experiences, stronger relationships, and even this flow state.
See, it's worth it.
I'm starting to see why you're so into this whole risk-taking thing, but we do have to be real about the downsides, right? The
Yeah.
source mentioned that too,
Oh,
right?
yeah, totally. It's
Yeah.
important to remember that not every risk is a good risk. Just jumping into things without thinking about what could happen, that's not what we're talking about. This source highlighted the importance of calculated risks.
Calculated risks, yeah.
Yeah. Meaning, you weigh the good and the bad before taking the leap. Embracing challenges is awesome, but constantly diving into risky situations without thinking about what could go wrong, well, that could backfire. And that can really hurt your self-esteem. It's all about balance, finding that sweet spot between playing it safe and being reckless.
Right. It's like being smart about it, not just throwing caution to the wind, but making informed decisions.
Exactly. And being ready for whatever comes next.
I like how you put that. Speaking of being ready, the source had some really good tips for taking healthy risks. I think these will be super helpful for you given the decision you're facing.
I think so too. And these tips are all about helping you take risks in a way that feels exciting but also manageable. It's about using those nervous butterflies as fuel, not letting them scare you off.
Oh, I love that. Using butterflies as fuel. Okay, I'm ready to hear these tips. I bet our listener is dying to know how to put all this into action.
Yeah, let's get practical.
Should we move on to part 2 then?
Part 2 it is. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. This source has some really solid advice for approaching risk-taking in a way that, well, sets you up for success, not a meltdown.
I love that. I bet our listeners thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but how do I actually do it?
Right. So get this, the first step is to start small, like really small.
Okay.
They suggest things like trying a new dish at a restaurant, or joining a local group or activity. It may not seem like much, but it's all about building those confidence muscles.
Oh, I see what you mean, like dipping your toes in the water before jumping in the deep end.
Exactly. Every little risk you take adds to your confidence bank. And another Vicky, reframing failure. Don't see it as a setback. See it as like a learning experience. Ask yourself, okay, what did I learn from this?
That's such a good point. I mean, failure is part of life. It's how we look at it that matters.
Totally. It's like that Thomas Edison quote. I love this one. He said, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work.
Huh, yeah. He knew what he was talking about.
And along those lines, it's important to prepare for uncertainty. And that's kind of the whole point of taking risks, right? You're stepping into the unknown. The source really emphasized focusing on what you can control, like how prepared you are and how much effort you put in.
Right. You can't always predict the outcome, but you can control those things.
Exactly. It's like the difference between just hoping for the best versus making a plan.
That's like being proactive.
Yes. And here's something I think is so important, especially with big decisions. Don't go it alone. Talk to people you trust, friends, mentors. Share your goals and fears.
It makes such a difference having people in your corner.
It really does. It's like having a safety net.
Mm.
Even if you trip up, there's someone there to catch you.
Yeah.
And when things do go well, don't forget to celebrate.
Oh, celebrate those wins.
The source made a good point about recognizing and celebrating those moments when risks pay off. It reinforces that positive behavior and encourages you to keep pushing your boundaries. Give yourself a high five.
I like that. A high five for bravery. Okay, we've covered some great tips, but I think a real-life story might help make this all click. The source talked about a guy named Mark.
Oh yeah, Mark's story is a classic leap of faith kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he had this corporate job, but always dreamed of opening a bakery. He hesitated for years, but finally decided to take the risk.
Wow.
The first few months were rough, but his business ended up thriving. And he found a level of happiness and purpose he never had before.
That's amazing. He took that what if and made it, I did it. But what I find even more inspiring is that even if the bakery hadn't taken off, the experience itself would have been so valuable.
You're so right. He learned new skills, built confidence, and discovered how resilient he is.
He really took a chance on himself.
And that's the beauty of risk-taking. Even if things don't go exactly as planned, the journey is still so rewarding. It's that whole, it's not the destination, it's the journey thing.
And in Mark's case, that journey led him to understand himself and what he's capable of so much better.
Absolutely. But, what do you think was the biggest risk Mark took? Was it quitting his job? Investing his savings? Or was it something else entirely?
Good question. I think the biggest risk was overcoming his own self-doubt. It was believing in himself and his dream, even when other people might have had their doubts.
That's such a good point. It was that risk of stepping outside his comfort zone, embracing the unknown, even when fear was holding him back.
It's like those internal risks are often the ones that lead to the most powerful changes. They shape who we are, how resilient we are, and ultimately how happy we are.
They really do. And I think we need to talk more about that in part 3. Let's distill this all down into something actionable for our listener who's about to make a big decision.
Yes, let's wrap it up in part 3. All right, so we've really dug into this idea of risk-taking. We looked at the science behind it, how to handle failure, and even heard that awesome story about Mark opening his bakery.
Mark's awesome.
He is. But what strikes me is how all of this connects back to you, our listener, and this big decision you've got coming up.
Totally. After everything we've talked about, I think the big takeaway is that taking risks, especially those calculated ones we talked about,
Right, the smart ones.
can really boost your happiness no matter what. Whether it's trying that new hobby you've been thinking about, starting that side
Oh,
hustle,
I love side hustles.
or making a major life change, stepping outside that comfort zone can open up a whole world of possibilities. Growth, new experiences, a deeper sense of purpose. It's like unlocking a whole new you.
I love that. Unlocking a new you. And it's not about being, reckless. It's
Right.
about embracing those moments that push you a little bit, those moments that make you go, okay, this is a little scary, but I'm going to do it anyway.
That's where the magic happens. And like
Yeah.
we talked about, even if things don't go exactly how you planned, the journey itself is worth it. You become more resilient, you learn from those missteps, and you find strengths you didn't even know you had. It's like you're leveling up.
I like how you put that leveling up. So to our listener out there who's at a crossroads, facing a decision that feels risky,
We see you.
we do. What's one tiny step you can take today to start moving in the direction you want to go?
Sometimes the smallest actions lead to the biggest changes. It's like planting a seed. So maybe it's doing some research or talking to someone who's been in a similar situation. Maybe it's just writing down your hopes and fears in a journal. That small step can grow into something amazing. Whatever it is, take that step. You'll be amazed by what you discover along the way.
That is such great advice. Trust your gut, take that leap of faith, and embrace the adventure that comes with stepping outside your comfort zone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep taking those deep dives.